Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for my rational perspective on Chelsea 0, Spurs 0. On Abramovich's 1,000th game as Chelsea's owner, it was a cagey affair that ended in a draw, a goalless draw. Another one for Chelsea recently, and a goalless draw last season for Chelsea under Frank Lampard seemed unthinkable. They're becoming a lot more consistent now, and I think that does show the defensive improvement. It was two very good sides, very informed sides as well, with a lot of momentum and confidence and chemistry going into this game, cancelling each other out. I don't think it was a major surprise how Jose set up. That was sort of for him, I guess, and thinking back to his days at Chelsea, sort of the perfect big game, sort of away performance in terms of defensively, not being exposed too many times. You come away with a point, and in terms of winning a title, Jose always looked at it like, you get your points away from home, you stay undefeated, get those points on the road, but then you win your games at home, which they've done pretty successfully so far this season. But just because we didn't get the dream win today for Frank Lampard, and it would have been such a big win for Lampard, I do think you can look at this game as another sign of progress in the right direction. More, of course, defensively when you look at a 0-0 draw. Us in this 4-3-3 formation, which I wanted to see Lampard use. I mean, it wasn't that sort of difficult to predict the starting 11 based on recent games, which is good going into a game like this. The only debate point you could have had was Kai Havertz or Kovacic, but I think, Kovacic, I felt, asserted himself well in this game. I think in terms of improvement over the game, in terms of tackling, being a battler in that midfield, I thought Kova got better as the game went on, actually. And of course, we saw Kai Havertz come off the bench. There were a few moments at the start that I was a little bit concerned that Spurs were going to do us on the counter. Bergwijn had a shot that went over. It looked like Son and Kane especially dropping deeper, finding that space. Chelsea giving the ball away too sloppily in that first half. But that only happened a couple of times in that first half. Mendy had to make a save from Aurier. But in terms of Kane and Son connecting, Lampard and Chelsea effectively shut that down today. One of the most potent and threatening attacks and combinations so far this season in the Premier League. Historically as well, they're breaking records. Chelsea gave them nothing today, and I think Frank Lampard deserves credit for that, because too often in big games, if Lampard gets it right, I see a lot of his critics forget about it, basically. I think today, tactically, I think you've got to give Lampard credit for that we sort of shut down Spurs' biggest threats. If Lampard was an awful tactician, if he didn't know what he was doing, that would have been an area that Spurs would have exposed. Although you can look at, Jose and look at his approach and say it's a reactive approach, he's wanted to defend instead of attack straight away. I still think we should be impressed by that by Lampard, and I think it shows the improvement we've seen over the last month or so, probably over that now, in terms of our defensive improvement. Another clean sheet for the coach who apparently can't set up a defence in a big game. We would have wanted those 3 points, and I'm absolutely sure Jose is the more content of the two coaches coming away from this game. I felt that we improved in the second half. I think the biggest thing for me was in the first half, we really lacked off the ball runners. I think our play was a lot more static. It was very easy to defend against. I felt in the second half we were able to liven it up a bit, get Reece James more into the game, which was key for Chelsea. It's key to Chelsea's way of attacking, getting Reece on that right. He put in some lovely crosses, as he mostly does in his career. He has an amazing rate for great crosses. Unfortunately, Tammy Abraham did not have a good day in front of goal. He did have to go off. It did seem like he was injured. He was, on the floor quite late on, and Drew came on for him. But I did feel like as the game, even parts of that first half, seeing the way Chelsea were being forced to attack, a lot of crosses into the box, you felt like this was a game calling out for Giroud, and I was a little bit disappointed he didn't come on sooner, really, because it seemed like a game very much suited for him, and Tammy did not take his opportunities. There weren't many clear-cut opportunities in the game. I mean, I think of Mason Mount's shot from deep late on, Reece making an amazing save. I mean, that would have been a spectacular strike. It really would. A world-class save from Hugo Reece. I mean, in terms of our goal, Mendy didn't have to do a lot other than the Aurier shot in the first half. There was a few times he had to come out and claim a cross, but I felt his decision-making was good. And I just think all around it's a frustrating game to talk about, right? Because it's not event-filled. It's, you can't make any great conclusions. But I have to say about this, I don't think you could have, whatever way this game went, we are only 10 games into the Premier League season. Chelsea's 10th game this season in the Premier League. I mean, I think I said this in my preview. When you judge sort of last season in context where that was sort of on the calendar, that was the 4-2 win away to Burnley, in late October. So we still are a month behind. It doesn't really hurt or dent our momentum massively. I think that Lampard will look at the positives, he'll look at the defensive positives that I will as well. The structural defensive positives, the fact of playing that 4-3-3 with Kante as a lone DM and us keeping a clean sheet, not looking massively exposed. I think that works, and I actually think in the second half there were some positive signs that Chelsea could have sort of that rigid balance in midfield, but also start to express themselves a bit more. I mean, unfortunately, in a game like this, Timo Werner was pretty much shut down. So was Ziyech. I mean, Ziyech put in a few good crosses on his left foot, and I think it's very difficult to stop a player like Ziyech. Unfortunately, the person on the end of those crosses, Tammy Abraham, just didn't have a very good day. But of course, that you could say the same about Reece James. But I thought Reece James defensively and offensively had a good game today, especially late on. There was a moment Spurs got a corner, because mostly they'd been camped in their own half. Chelsea had a lot of the ball. And it was a looping ball, very dangerous moment, late on in the game. And pretty much, Reece James, and it was him and Harry Kane, and he just muscled Kane out the way and cleared the ball. And I think that shows you, once again, a very competent, classy player. That Reece James this season, I think that sort of shows you both sides of his game this season, the balance within his game, that he can be that threat offensively. Those crosses into the box, they're absolutely wonderful, that are deadly to defend, basically almost impossible to defend. But defensively, that improvement within his game that has kept him in the first team ahead of Dave so far this season as well. It was good to see that off the bench, Drew coming on, Pulisic now back fit. I could still see a few things within sort of Pulisic, that there was a few moments late on where he got the ball just outside the box, and I felt like the Pulisic of last season with fitness would have drove at the Spurs defence. There was a few times where I think he cut back, checked back, quite clearly a player lacking match fitness or sharpness or confidence. Hopefully he'll gain that in the coming matches as well, and I think hopefully we'll see it a bit more, because he's such an important player for us. And as we go into these very hectic weeks leading up to Christmas, Frank is going to have to rotate his team. Of course, the game could have had goals right at the end. Both teams, both defences making key mistakes in added time. I mean, not the best thing for either supporter's sort of heart rate. Firstly, Olivier Giroud. I mean, you could see the ball coming over, and I think it was Rodon, wasn't it? The header in, and I just can't believe Drew didn't get enough power to that, in terms of he could clearly see Reece was coming for the ball. You just got to loop it over him at that point, and that's really disappointing for Giroud. He could have had two sort of very late added time winners for Chelsea in 2 games, scoring the winner against Rennes, maybe having an impact off the bench today. I wonder if he'll potentially start in midweek against Sevilla based on maybe Tammy's fitness, Werner maybe needing a rest, it may be a good time to bring back Giroud into the first team. Of course, Kane now back fit as well. But then, Kurt Zouma making that mistake, passing the ball, a suicidal ball. Luckily, Lo Celso couldn't make the most of it, and it went out, and that was basically the end of the game. But in terms of the result, I think you have to be content with it in terms of the improvement defensively from Chelsea, and also tactically the balance within midfield. I think this 4-3-3 continues to look like the best formation that Lampard has currently to use, and will continue using it. It's just now we go into that Sevilla game, a massive sort of deciding game in the group, and then Leeds next week. Leeds are not going to do what Spurs did today. They're not going to sit in their own half and just wait for things to happen and wait to counter us. So that's going to be a completely different beast next week when fans are allowed back in the stadium. At least 2,000 fans allowed back in the bridge, so that's good as well. Let me know your opinions. In terms of the man of the match, I think you always have to go for a defensive player. I'm probably going to give it to Reece James. I think Reece, in terms of a big game player, in terms of trying to set up the winner for his teammates, but also defensively, I think he's come on so much so far this season, and it's great to see a young player still featuring heavily in the first team. But let me know your man of the match, your thoughts on the game in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.